Hi and welcome to a tutorial on how to create your first post request and how to test your API with Postman. Now Postman is a very handy tool if you want to build APIs. If you're alone or in a team, it can really automate the testing. It can automate you not having a front end to test with, so it speeds everything up significantly. So if you go to postman.com, you can get the product, but it can be a bit overwhelming for a new developer to get into the user interface. So let's start and see what we can do once we have installed the program. So as you can see here on the right side, we have the API that I built in my tutorial. So in my previous video, I built a very small sample API that provides an info.html that has a text returned for on test, that has a JSON returned when we access the route data, and that's about it. So to test this, these are GET requests. I need to open a browser and do everything like that. Now, a browser cannot create post requests, as I have said multiple times in the past. So we want to create our first post request and save some data later on. So let's get Postman up and running, make a collection, and make sure we can test these routes. So first of all, I'm going to run my API. It's not found. Let me check. Sometimes it just doesn't work. So npm install, module not found. Okay. And then we run it again. Oh, see, this is what you get if you're typing on a small screen. Notemon index. Okay, now we're up and running. So as you can see, my first REST API listening at localhost 3000. I could click this and open this in the browser, but I now will use Postman to make my tests. So we know that it is running. We can do a small test here. If I click on this and I grab over my page, I see that it works. Now, of course, I want to test it using Postman. So I'm going to open this. When you install it, you will have a workspace, a place where you can place all your API calls and collections. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our workspace, here, my workspace, and create a new collection. A collection is basically a grouping of all the API calls to a singular, for a single project. For our case, we're going to make something for session 6, which is the session in Web 2 that handles APIs. So we're going to create a new collection, and we're going to call that collection session 6. Okay, I'm going to start that because it's our favorite session. As you can see, it's all tabbed here, so you can close the tab for now. We will not go into all the details, but we will create some different API calls. So if we click on session, it says it's empty. Add a new request to get started. So we will add a new request. And as you can see, lots of things happening here. We have a new tab and a name. So the name is going to be get the root. The root as in just the regular URL. Now, what is my URL that I want to call? HTTP. As you can see, I've prepared some stuff. So localhost 3000. Again, if you are hosting your API on a different server, you will have a different URL to place here. Okay, so as you can see here, localhost, this will call to my API that is currently running. Now, without even adding anything, let's just click send and see what happens. And as you can see in the bottom, you see the response. So this is the top part is all the request. What do we get back? We get back status code 200. Perfect. We get it took 3 milliseconds. It was 773 bytes that were crossed, and I got a response. The response is automatically viewed as an HTML apparently in this case. And look, we have our HTML page. Perfect. So as you can see here, this works exactly as we would like. We have our HTML page, and we can do some more tests. Now, to show you that your URL needs to be in order, let's make it localhost 2. Localhost 2, spoiler alert, does not exist. So if you press send, it's going to keep sending the request. It's going to search for it. could not found. Get address info, not found. That's broken. So that means if I do it again, I get my page. If I choose a different port, again, this will be not found. Look at the type of request that we are sending in the beginning. Remember the theory of the different request methods? Well, here you have even more that you want, but there is no post request on the route URL. So if we send, it's going to say cannot post because it does not exist. So it finds the server, but there is no post route. We will create that later on. So let's do get. As you can see, we have a test route and we have a data route. Let's create more API requests here in the session so we always can test these out. So the easiest way to do this is, of course, save this works, and then duplicate both of these. So they are all GET requests. We basically do not have to put the word GET in front of it because the GET is here in front of it. So it's clear as well. We will do the testing route, and we will add /test, and we can immediately test this. Test succeeded. Perfect. That works. Save it, and then the last one would be data. And then add the correct URL. So now we have, as you can see, we get back the JSON file. We have 3 API calls here that we can keep testing. I think there's something called run collection. We can run the session and we see okay. So to show again, we can take the whole session, click here on the 3 dots, and then say run collection. I use this in very expansive projects when you have like a complete deploy of the new project, and then you see how it handles. So as you can see here, 1 iteration, those 3. Let's see, I can save the responses if I want to. I'm gonna run it, and no tests associated with it. Testing is not part of this course, but you can see it says okay, and okay. If we were to mess up one of them, for example, test 1, and we will run the collection again, you will see that 404, there's a mistake here, it's wrong, and we can fix that. As you can see, it's 404 not found, and all the rest are okay. So we're gonna fix that, and then go on to the next part. So as mentioned before, you cannot create a post request in your browser. So if I were to create a new request that actually saves a board game or does something with it with regards to our board game application, we need to do something with that, or we need to do it through Postman. So let's create our first post request, gathering data from the body of the request itself. As you can see here, it's still running. So we will create a new request. App.post, that means it's a post request. And I'm going to add a path, save data. So it can be any data. I'm gonna build the same structure. So again, a callback function with request and response. And we have that. Okay, so how do we get the data out of the body? How we will add it, we will see in the Postman in a second. But let's say we are passing along a board game. We need to test that. So console log. In the request, there is a parameter called body. Now it will be empty at first, but let's see what we can do. I'm going to send back a code. Data received. Okay. Let's see how we will get into this method. So save data. I will open Postman again. And we will create a new route. Duplicate. We will change the method here, post, and we will add the URL save data. Now, if we want to send some data with it, then save data. Then we need to add it to the body. So in the body, you can choose what types of data you want to send. So most of them, if they're not familiar to you, don't worry about it. We're gonna just go raw and basically say that we are providing JSON. So let's say we have board game, tapestry, and we're gonna pass along an ID. Pass along an ID. Voila, random ID. So this is a valid JSON object. And now we will send that data to the URL. Sent. Data received. But did it receive? Now, we will check our code again. And as you can see, it says undefined. Undefined means the body is not filled in somewhat. Now, the body is unstructured when it arrives in our API, so we need an extra tool to help us out with that. So what we need is body parser. Body parser is parsing middleware, and it will parse incoming requests bodies so you can use it, and it will make it available under rec.body. So the request.body. Now I can go through all the documentation. Again, this is very handy to look at. We will use the JSON body parser, of course, but I will show you immediately in the code. So body parser is a npm package. So we will install it. npm install body parser. Voila. That's installed. I will include it at the top. Const body parser require, so this should all be very familiar. Body parser. Save. So now we have the body parser. And now we already said something, it's called middleware. Now what is middleware? Middleware is the most important word in that is middle. That means when a request arrives at the API, it can go through middleware. So that means before it actually reaches your folders, your methods, your functions here in the routes, it can go through a piece of code that does something with it. Middleware is mostly used for authentication, for verification. Are you even allowed into this API? Because you're not going to check it in each function here. You're going to check it every time a method comes in. So that means we use middleware. And how do we add middleware in Express? We use the function use. So now we're going to add body parser in here. And we're going to tell that every body that comes through here is converted to JSON, because we're only going to be using this API to receive and send back JSON data. So app.use body parser. And that has, if you look at the documentation, it has a very clean function called JSON. So that means each function that comes through with a body, it will try to convert it with to a JSON file, and it will provide it into rec.body. I will add a comment. I will add a comment to my GitHub. So in my GitHub, there will be a more expansive example that you can look at. So back to our piece of code. We have not changed anything. We just added some middleware. Let's go back to the console log. We will send our application, our request again. So back to Postman. We click on send. Again, we will send the board game. Data is received. Let's look at the console log and look at that. We have our board game. Now, to really make sure that we can work with it, we can actually do this. Data received with ID. And of course, I can do some magic here, as in rec.body. That's the tapestry board game .id. Let's try again. Send. And look at that. Data received with ID 285, whatever. So that means our post request works. We can send data to the from Postman to our API. Now, of course, eventually you will use a fetch statement in your front end to do that, but to have all the data ready here in Postman and to have our API actually get it and being able to work with it, you're one step closer to finalizing your course project with these functions. So of course, post we're going to be using to saving data, updating data, and deleting data. I would say good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.